Alright, in this video, we're gonna go over how I edit audio in DaVinci Resolve. Again, this is one of my super simple tutorials, so this is not gonna go super in depth. This is gonna be just an overview of how I get good audio for my YouTube videos in DaVinci Resolve, what tools I use to edit, how I EQ it, and I'll throw in a few bonuses of how to do some different effects at the end of this video. So let's just dive straight into DaVinci Resolve. You'll see in my timeline, I have this clip and we want to make sure that the audio sounds really nice. So I'm just going to trim a little section just for us to work with for this demonstration, and I'm actually going to duplicate it so that we can have a really nice before and after. This is what the clip sounds like with no adjustments. This is just straight out of camera. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas. It can create some AI thumbnails to give you ideas. Sounds pretty good so far. And you can see over here in the audio panel, I haven't made any adjustments yet. That's just how the microphone sounded straight out of camera. That's actually the same microphone I'm using right now, the Hollyland Lark Mark II. So it sounds pretty good without us making any adjustments, but we can make it sound even better. The first thing I always do is add AI voice isolation. So we're just going to turn this on with our clip selected, and the amount you choose, you can play with it and kind of see what sounds the best. In some environments, you only need to do like 25%, but in a really controlled environment like my studio, I can get away with doing usually between 75 and 80%. So let's just put it on 75 and see what difference that made. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ. So basically this just isolates only your voice. So it takes out some of the air conditioner noise, it'll take out low rumbles of cars going by, different sounds like that. And maybe if your mouth makes a little bit of noises, like some S's or some, mouth sounds that we all hate to hear. Does anybody else have like a thing about mouth noises? I do, it drives me nuts. Anyway, voice isolation will kind of remove all of that and isolate just your voice. So let's just turn it on and off and kind of see what it's doing. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you. You can see there was a little bit of room echo, and it's just kind of taking that away, isolating the voice so that it has a really nice studio sound quality to it. So that's the first thing that I always do. I usually do about 75–80% on my YouTube videos because I'm in a controlled studio. You really have to test your audio clip. It depends on if there were like other people talking in the background. It really depends on the scenario with how much voice isolation you can use without it sounding kind of weird. So just play with it, test it out. It's a really awesome feature and it levels up your audio literally with just the one click and being able to adjust your amount. So that's the first thing I always do to my audio. Well, not necessarily the first thing. If I need to, I'll adjust volume. If it needed to be brought down or brought up, that's usually what I'll do first, is kind of level that audio. Then I'll apply AI voice isolation. The next thing I do is actually come over here to the Fairlight tab. We can zoom this in just a little so we can see both of our clips. This is the one we're making all of our adjustments to. And for this next example, I'm actually going to move our second audio to layer 2 because I'm going to do EQ. Now, don't be afraid, EQ can be really in-depth. I do the very bare minimum when I EQ just to edit the sound just a little to give it a better sound. I'm a musician, so I kind of have more of an ear for how things should sound, but anybody can do this. So the easiest way that I do it is just come over here to our track 1. You want to make sure that everything on track 1 is something you want to EQ. And I always have my main audio on track 1 and I'll just EQ that whole thing all together. So we're just gonna double click right here on EQ. This will pull up our equalizer. The first thing I always do is enable band 6 and band 1 just to roll off your lows and your highs. I'll usually roll lows to like 100, maybe 105, 107. And that's because the human voice actually doesn't even affect any of those low frequencies, lower than like 115. So that's gonna be able to cut out a lot of that low rumble that might come from your air conditioner or a car going by or something like that. Because you're not affecting the human voice if you affect those frequencies below like 115 hertz. And I promise I'm not gonna get super technical in this, just giving you some overview of why I'm doing certain things. I also like to roll off some of those higher frequencies. This just helps get rid of some of those sounds that might come into your audio. The next thing I do is come over here to band 3 and band 4, and I just adjust the Q factor pretty high, and I'll show you what this does. So we can adjust these frequencies, right? And the Q factor is basically just how much you're adjusting. So I'll show here, we can adjust just a small number of frequencies, or we can adjust a larger band of frequencies all at one time. So I'll kind of raise this up so that we're not affecting too much. And then I'll do what's called a frequency sweep. And basically I will max out that frequency and I will sweep the audio to try to find those icky sounding frequencies, and so that we can drop those out a little bit to give the sound a better quality. So I'll show you what this means. We're gonna go over here, just make sure our clip's at the beginning. Click play and I'll show you what this does. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas. It can create some AI thumbnails to give you ideas. So that's what the sweep does. Now we want to find those frequencies that are like, make it stop whenever you sweep through them. Now sometimes there's a lot of those that kind of sound icky, but some of those you need to have in your audio for it to sound normal. But I will say between 2K and 3K, I usually almost always bring those down just a little, because from 2000 to 3000 hertz is actually the frequency that vibrates your inside canal inside your ear. And I won't go into the deep science behind all of that, but because it kind of vibrates that, it can almost be that piercing quality that you might end up with your audio. So I usually almost always drop out that 2 to 3K just to kind of get rid of some of that piercing, almost sounds like it's too loud, but it's really not decibel wise. So we'll kind of come through, I'll show you what that sounds like. This is normal. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. You can see it, it's just this icky. Can help you. So we're just gonna drop it out, watch this. Title ideas, it can create some AI thumbnails to give you ideas. This is just a before and after of us pulling down that little frequency range. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI. Very subtle, but it just kind of takes out some of those icky sounding frequencies. Then the second one that I usually always do is anywhere between 500 and 800. So let's see what that sounds like. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas. You can see it's kind of the worst right there. So let's drop that out. It can create some AI thumbnails to give you ideas. So let's see what that sounds like now. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas. It can create some... So you can see with just small adjustments, that helped the audio just sound a little bit better. More like it was coming from like a podcast mic, gives it more of like a studio sound than just leaving it open. And could you leave it open with nothing, no EQ, nothing on it? Of course, it sounded fine. But this just adds a little bit of extra quality and makes it sound a little bit better, especially for people that are wearing headphones or different things like that. And usually that's where I kind of stop. I don't do a ton of audio editing just because I'm using the right microphones, and if you have the right placement, you can get really good audio up front. So you only have to do minor adjustments in post. So I'll usually go in, adjust the volume, then I'll add AI voice isolation, then I'll come over and EQ it. And that's typically my process for editing talking, voice, a person audio in DaVinci Resolve. But before we go, I'll show you how to add just a couple of different effects. There are tons of effects that you can add in the audio section, but these are just a couple that you can add if you want to spice up or change up your audio. So let's open the effects panel up here, and let's just add some reverb. You can just literally drag that right over onto your clip, and there are different ones that are kind of preset. I have one preset for my church because I do preaching reels, and so I love the way I kind of got this tuned in. So I'll just show you these settings. You can pause the video and screenshot these settings if you want to recreate this same reverb sound that I use. But let's just see how we can apply this to this clip and get a feel for how the reverb sounds. So your overall level of reverb will be controlled by your output, your dry or wet. So if it's dry, that's just going to be just the audio, and the more wet it is, it will be the reverb added in. So all plain audio, all reverb, or you can mix it in. So let's just start low and I'll show you what this sounds like. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas, and all the way wet is just the reverb. I've recently been using... So let's start this over. Let's just add in a little bit. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI. So it almost sounds like I'm giving a presentation in like a big hall. So that's just one way that you can add reverb. You can go in and adjust all of the tones, the different things to get the sound that you want out of your reverb. But for this clip, I don't want reverb, so we'll just turn that off. Let's go back to effects. Right here, you'll see high pass and low pass. So let's just see what these do. Let's drag low pass onto our clip. Then we'll start our clip from the beginning, and you can adjust this point to roll off and only allow those lows to come in. So this is basically kind of what we did on our EQ, but in more of an extreme case. So you could do this if you wanted to make it sound like I was talking in like the room next door. So let me show you. I've recently been using a tool called vidIQ, which is basically AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts. So it sounds like I'm in the room next door. Just makes it more muffled. Sometimes you can use this in small amounts if, for example, you have a song that has a lot of like really bright points. And since I have a brighter female voice, sometimes a brighter song will kind of compete with my voice. So I could throw on a low pass filter and kind of mute that music just a little bit to take away some of those highs and kind of give it more of that muted feeling. The high pass filter is the opposite. So let's turn off the low pass filter. Let's add the high pass filter. And it sounds like it's on like a cell phone. AI for YouTubers. This can help you come up with scripts, title ideas. It can create some AI thumbnails to give you. So you could do that if you're doing a scene and someone is talking on the phone, you could add a high pass filter to mimic that sound of the person's voice coming from a cell phone if you're standing, near them. So that's high pass and low pass. There are so many more effects that you can do. My advice is just to play around with it, figure out what you like, and get your sound to how you like it, because audio really is personal preference. But I just wanted to make this video to show you my audio process and how I edit talking head audio. Anyway, if you like this video, be sure to check out some of the other videos on my channel. I'm doing a series on DaVinci Resolve, so you can be sure and check out some other videos from that series. I'm also doing a series on Lightroom, so comment below any topics that you want to see me cover in DaVinci Resolve or Lightroom, or any other ideas that you might have for me to make a video on. Hope you found some value in this, and if you did, I don't know, like, maybe subscribe.